Our next presentation is going to be from Silvia Hartt from Mount Chase. So Silvia.
Hi, I'm Silvia Hartt, and yeah, like Aaron said, I'm from Mount Chase. I'm a senior at Katahdin High School this year. I've loved the outdoors my whole life, so BYCC is right up my alley. This is my second year, and for my presentation, I am going to be, I'm going to be, talking about fisheries biology, and Aaron, it's not letting me share my screen.
Click on the box.
Oh wait, there. Now I can. Can you see this all right?
Can
you see my screen?
We're still seeing your Zoom screen. Yeah, there you go. You're all set now.
Oh, yeah. All right. My project is on fishing and fisheries biology in Baxter. And I love fisheries biology. I want to do it for a career, that or wildlife biology. I'm not sure which I've decided yet. So so let's jump in here. First, I'm going to be talking about the eastern brook trout, also known as char. They're cold water fish. They ideally like 68 degrees Fahrenheit, although they can live up to 75 degrees. They inhabit most northeastern North America, from Newfoundland, Canada, all the way down to Georgia. Out of the 1,503 lakes and ponds, only 491 are currently stocked. It's estimated that 22,250 miles of Maine streams are home to brook trout. That's 70% of Maine's and most of them are wild, not stocked at all. Brook trout require cold, clean, well-oxygenated water that is suitable for spawning, nursery, and adult life. That's why in the summertime you can mostly find them in deeper water or around spring holes or in moving water like streams, because it's really oxygenated and usually cooler. They typically don't live past the age of 3, although in 1961 a biologist found a 9-year-old trout in Moosehead. They're not picky eaters at all. They'll eat anything from plankton to small mammals, though they commonly eat worms, leeches, amphibians, aquatic insects, and other fish. The average length for a 3-year-old brook trout in lakes is 1.3 inches, although water temperature and food availability can affect this. So colder water, smaller fish; less food, smaller fish; more food, bigger fish. Stream populations actually grow slower than lake populations do, and a 3-year-old stream trout in a stream is usually 7.8 inches, and a brook trout maturing at a higher population is less than 6 inches. So now I'm going to be talking about Maine heritage fish waters. It's really important that we have heritage waters in the state of Maine, because I was talking to a biologist today, and he told me that like a bunch of other states just lost so many so fast, and Maine was like, okay, we really got to get on this. We really got to start protecting our waters. So 720, that's 60% of the lakes or ponds, have natural reproduction in the state of Maine. We account for over 90% of the remaining native brook trout lakes and ponds in the U.S., something around like 98%. Baxter State Park is home to 42 heritage waters. Only 7 of the waters in Baxter State Park are stocked. The #1 threat to these waters are invasive fish species. They'll take up too much room, take up too much food, stuff like that. 585 of the heritage fish waters are protected by the state heritage fish law, and that law was a citizen-driven legislative action, and it prohibits stocking and the use of live fish as bait in these heritage waters. So next we're going to be moving on to the Wildlife State Heritage Fish Informational Sign Initiative. It's really long. So the initiative aims to help protect Maine's waters by putting up the sign that you see. These signs make anglers aware of the location of these waters, the heritage status, the threats that invasive fish pose, and the laws in place. It'd be a really great thing to have these signs up because 20 to 30% of people that use live bait or dump bait in ponds don't even know that it's illegal, don't know what they're doing is wrong. So that would help a lot to have those signs. You can donate, adopt a sign, adopt a pond, or volunteer for the Native Fish Coalition to help this cause. You can visit their website. It's down there below. These are the general fishing laws for Baxter State Park. These all apply unless stated otherwise, which they'll be I'm going to have the general information for the pond, so like the depth, the water temperature on the surface, stuff like that on the slides, but I'm not going to read it because we timed me and I took 30 minutes when I read everything, so these are the general fishing laws here. So first we're going to be starting with Lower Basin Pond, and Lower Basin was actually a biologist, his name's Kevin, he just told me this today, or a few days ago, that this was actually illegally stocked. They think someone backpacked some trout up there and dumped them in, but they don't know 100% because no one's willing to own up to it because, you know, it's illegal. But anyway, so now there's brook trout in both Upper and Lower Basin Pond, but I'm just focusing on Lower. So there's brook trout. There's no record of stocking. The trail leading up to this is about 2 miles. It's on the Chimney Pond Trail. I came here with my family the first week of Baxter. We were hiking and we stayed at Chimney Pond for a couple of nights and hiked to the top. These are some pictures from my trip. Over to the left you can see is Hamlin Ridge. We hiked all the way to Baxter Peak and then down Hamlin. And then you can see Chimney Pond, and then at Chimney Pond, we saw a Barrow's goldeneye, which was really cool. I didn't know that that would be up there. And then there's a 2-line salamander. Apparently, they're abundant in Chimney Pond. Next, we have Billfish Pond. It's a 3.3-mile trail. I went in there twice, and it was, oh my God, it was amazing both times. It is beautiful, crystal clear. The swimming is amazing. I went fishing here. I didn't catch anything. Surprise, surprise. But anyway, so there's brook trout here and fine scale dace. And this pond is stocked. And over the past 5 years, there were 300 brook trout average, around 6 inches. The spawning that happens at this pond is around the spring seepage at the bottom. And so I didn't catch anything while fishing anywhere I went, but it turns out that there's a guy who writes a blog. His name is Stan. I'm going to be referring to him as that. And he wrote a blog, and he went to a bunch of places in Baxter State Park, so I read about his fishing experience. And so he fished here, and he used 3 colored spoons. He caught a 19.5-inch brookie. It was 2.8 pounds. Very impressive. And his son caught little 3-inch brookies off the shore, and they went fishing here end of September. These are some pictures from my trip. I'm holding an Indian cucumber over here. You can dig those up and eat them, just trail nibble. Oh my God, they're really good. And then there's a picture of my paddle and our canoe. You can see my poles sticking out of the canoe. This is Lower Fowler. It's a 2-mile trail at the lower end of Baxter. It's a heritage water. Brook trout are in here, creek chub, black-nosed shiners, black-nosed dace, red-belly dace, and fine-scale dace, and there's no record of stocking for this one. This one seems to have always had trout. Spawning happens around the spring seepage, so this is a really, really shallow pond, and there's no thermal, it just, I can't remember what it's called. I'll remember later. But anyway, no thermal stratosphere, that's what it's called. So the bottom is the same temperature as the top, so trout really don't have anywhere to hide other than around these spring holes. So that's where a lot of the spawning happens. And during the survey that I was reading about on MDIF and W, The trout here had black spot parasite, which it doesn't affect humans. It doesn't affect the taste of the trout, but it does affect birds that eat the trout. And the black spot parasite lives as an adult worm inside of birds. Stan went fishing here. He caught 9 fish in late September, between 9 and 13 inches, and he used a Mickey fin fly because it's fly fishing only here. These are some pictures from my trip. You can see a chub being eaten from the inside out by leeches. I thought that was really cool. You can see this flower, I believe it's an iris, and then there's feathers from a blue jay that I believe was killed. I'm sorry, I think the coolest things are weird. I mean, the weirdest things are cool. Anyway, and then there's a loon, and that was the closest I've ever been to a loon in my entire life. We went out on a rainy day, and we just sat in the canoe, and it just swam right over to us. It was really cool. Next is Lower South Branch Pond. So I couldn't believe when I read this on the report, but I guess that this was dominated in the 60s by like suckers, chubs, and togue, and it's amazing. Both upper and lower South Branch are amazing trout waters, and you know they were dominated by these other fish, so trout were just killed off. And so Baxter State Park personnel decided to mix chemicals in both ponds to kill off the fish population, and then they dynamited a place in Lower South Branch Pond that blocks off, it must be like an underground stream or something like that. So that's blocked off, and then they restocked it with brook trout. They restocked it back in the 60s and the 80s, which that is just anyway. So now brook trout live here and in Upper South Branch, and Stan went fishing here. He caught 2 brook trout, one 14 inches, one 16 inches, and they used dead shiners, which is allowed as bait here if they're dead. Yeah, so he caught those here. And then these are some pictures from my trip. I went to Lower South Branch Pond, and then we canoed over to the Howe Brook Trail. That's my sister at Howe Brook, looking all pretty and stuff at the waterfall. And then there's the brook itself. The water is really, really cold, but it is beautiful. And then here we have Upper South Branch. It's the same as Lower South Branch, brook trout. They did the chemical mixing and everything. And I'm assuming that the spawning for both Lower and Upper South Branch are done on the rocky shores where the pebbles are, or in the stream in between. And Stan caught 2 brook trout here. They were 13 inches with a moose-look spoon. And then these are from my trip to Upper South Branch Pond. I went to all these ponds. That's why these random ponds are on here. I hiked to all of these, and I decided that I was going to study only the ones I hiked to. So over here is my sister and I and my friend porting our canoes, and then this is our view from on top of the ledges, and that's my sister jumping off the ledges. The water there is great for swimming. So now we're going to Frost Pond. I backpacked and stayed in here one night. It is so peaceful. You're all alone. It's beautiful in there. So there are 3.8 miles of trail. There are brook trout and black-nosed dace, creek chub, pearl dace in here. It's stocked every year with an average of 350 fish for the past 5 years and around 5 inches. And my fishing stories for this are from my grandfather, Scotty, and he told me that 50 years ago when they took the survey, the original survey that I read, there were no fish. There was only oxygen 11 feet down. So they measured at 32 feet, and there was only oxygen 11 feet down. And they dropped fish in there anyway, trout, and they did this in the spring, and they asked my grandfather to go back in the fall. And so he flew back in the fall, and he went fishing, and he said that the fish had grown 2 times in size. And then, you know, he went home, and they called him again in the spring and asked him to go, and he went again in the spring, and they had grown up to 1 pound. He also told me of a time someone wanted him to pick up a canoe in there, so he flew in with my uncle at like 4:35 in the morning. They caught 2 or 3 fish, around 2 or 3 pounds, and 22 to 24 inches. Just huge trout. They caught them on flies, they tied on the canoe, and they got out of there. So that's really cool. This is pictures from when I camped there. There's our campfire right there, and then there's me really angrily looking fishing. I promise I'm not mad. That's just my resting face. Next is Rum Pond. So Rum Pond is about a 0.4 mile trail from the road in the southern entrance. It's on the Roaring Brook Road. So there are pumpkin seed sunfish, white suckers, yellow perch, and golden shiners in here. It is not at all suitable for cold water fish. It's just too warm for them to survive. It doesn't stratify. So the bottom is the same as the top. There's probably not a lot of springs. Yeah. Next is Caverly Pond / Round Pond. If you're trying to look up fishing regulations, it's Round Pond. So in here there are brook trout, creek chub, and fine scale dace. This is stocked every year, and for the past 5 years it was stocked with an average of 250 fish around 6 inches. And the spawning probably happens on the gravel near the shore or in a small tributary, which is a little stream. Yep, I guess Stan didn't go fishing here. It's about 0.1 mile from the road on the southern entrance. Here we have Rocky Pond. This is also stocked with brook trout, and it's stocked for the past 5 years with around 220 fish and around 6 inches. It's really well oxygenated water, so that's really good for them. It's like 100 yards from the road. It's not hard at all. And they probably spawn on the gravelly shores that are here. And my sister swam here, and she went on those rocks all the way out in the middle, and she got on top of them, and she would jump off. So it's nice. It's nice swimming there too. Next we have Cranberry Pond. Cranberry Pond has, they haven't surveyed it. I called the biologist, I looked online, there's no survey of it. But it is beautiful. I highly recommend going there. It's a half a mile hike from the road, from Rocky Pond actually. And it's just, oh my gosh, it's so quiet and it's just beautiful. Here are some pictures that I took. So there's like the walkway that you walk to the trail on. There is a pitcher plant with water inside of it, looking down into it. And then there's a picture of a full pitcher plant. Very cool. It was so pretty. So next we have Webster Lake. I fished on the stream. I didn't fish in the lake, but the stream doesn't have a survey because it's a stream. But it does have fishing regulations. But first I'll read about Webster Lake. So there's brook trout, lake whitefish, round whitefish, long-nosed sucker, white sucker, cusk, fall fish, common shiner, and black-nosed dace here. It's a 12.7 mile hike, but I flew in. My grandfather flew me in to fish for my birthday. It was really fun. Yeah, I fished the stream. There's an inland outlet that's really good for spawning and nurseries, and it stratifies. So this lake does. It goes from warm at the top to cold at the bottom. So you're going to find a lot of those fish at the bottom. It's got really good oxygen in the lake, so it's perfect for trout. It's beautiful there. There's a big lean-to. You can camp, I think, 12 people there. I mean, it's definitely worth the hike if you're going to stay a couple of nights. It's beautiful in there. So these are some pictures from my flight. All the way to the left is a rainstorm that we could see from inside the plane. It was raining on where my sisters were working that day. They both got wet. And then over here is me fly fishing on Webster Stream. And then you can see the Katahdin line over here on the right. It was so pretty from in the plane. And that little nub of a mountain is Sugarloaf Mountain near Mount Chase. And then all the way at the bottom is an old dam that was built by hand many, many years ago. And if you do go into Webster, I highly recommend going down the stream and checking it out. It's not a far walk at all from the lean-to. It's just beautiful. Next is Long Pond. I backpacked in here and stayed a couple nights as well, and it's amazing. You can hear loons while you're sleeping, and there's the Pines campground and the Outlet campground, and they're both just really pretty. So it's a 2.4-mile hike, and there's no record of it being stocked. So it's another heritage pond. There's brook trout, smelt, black-nosed dace, red-belly dace, and fine-scale dace. And usually trout can just survive on insect feeding, but when the biologists were doing a survey, they found that they had eaten a lot of smelt, which is good for a trout's diet. And I'm sure those fish are nice and big in there. I didn't catch any. I did go fishing, but they were jumping around us and we could see them, but there was just no luck, which is okay. I just enjoy being out on the water. There's a good water quality, and when they took a survey, they noticed that some of the fish were over a pound in there, and the spawning is done inside the pond, most likely, on gravelly shores, or if there are springs, around the springs. So Stan ended up going fishing here around late September. He caught 2 fish, one 11 inches, one 13 inches, and he caught them on spinners. And he said he noticed there were still hatches even in September, late September when he went. He wished he had brought his flying rod, but he didn't. Here's some pictures. There's our tents where we stayed at the Outlet campsite. My sister eating by the fireplace, and then there's me sporting my Baxter Youth Conservation Corps shirt while paddling on billfish. We ended up hiking to billfish while we were there, and High Pond. Here's High Pond. So there's a big pond right there, and then the little guy right closer to the keyboard is that's High Pond. So there's no record of this being stocked either. It's a 2.6-mile hike, and it has brook trout, black-nosed dace, red-belly dace, and fine-scale dace. It does not thermally stratify, but the high altitude doesn't endanger the trout. So the water is cool enough at that high of an altitude. There's good oxygen, and the reproduction that happens in this pond is around the spring seepage. And Stan went fishing here. He caught 3 fish, one 11 inches, one 12 inches, and one 13 inches. And he went in late September, and he used a Phoebe when he was fishing. So next, we have Tracy Pond. The Tracy Pond, Elbow Pond, Grassy Pond, Daisy Pond trail is just, it's magnificent. You feel like you're walking, like you're going to step on a ferry at some point or something. Like it's really pretty, and there's mushrooms everywhere, and there's softwoods, like only softwoods. It's so gorgeous. So Tracy Pond is like 25 yards from the road on the southern entrance. There's no record of it being stocked. There's brook trout, fine-scale dace here. Moose are often seen in the pond, which comes to no surprise. There's a lot of weeds here. The air temperature really influences the pond. If you look down underneath the Tracy Pond label and see it's 64 degrees Fahrenheit in August with only 4 feet maximum depth, it's insane. There must just be like a lot of mountain weather coming off and cooling it down or something, because I mean it's crazy how cool of a temperature it is. The biologist said that it probably freezes down to the ground in some winters because of how short the water is. There's about a 5 to 6 foot hole near a dam here, where I guess a lot of the biologists found adult trout while they were doing this survey. And there's an inlet, which is cold water, and it's good for spawning and for a nursery. Next, we have Elbow Pond. There's no record of it being stocked. It's about half a mile from the road, and there are numerous springs that keep the pond cold throughout the summer, and the trout in here actually grow slower than they would in normal ponds because of how cool the water is kept with these springs. So yeah, they're always a little bit smaller than usual. So next we have Grassy Pond, which was by far my favorite place probably that I went in the park. It's about a mile or 0.9 miles, depending on which way you come in. There's no record of it being stocked. There's brook trout, golden shiners, and fine-scaled dace here in the pond. There's small springs, not many, within the pond, and there's a little gravel around them for spawning, so there's not much. And I guess the fish stay mostly towards the bottom in the summer, which makes sense because of the 75 degrees of the pond, and it's probably a little bit cooler down by the springs. And the minnows in the pond, you know, the shiners and dace, were found in the fish's stomachs when the biologists were checking it out, which means that they probably had to eat more fish because they didn't have enough other food. And Stan went fishing here in late September. He caught over 45 trout ranging from 5 inches to 10 inches in this pond, and they were using spinners the whole time. So he had a lot of luck here. These are some pictures I took from Grassy Pond. There's Katahdin. It was kind of a gloomier day. It's just an amazing view, way better in person. And there's some dead trees that we saw. I mean, it's so pretty. I want to go back and go out in a canoe. I didn't have enough time, but it was just, it was beautiful. And last but not least, we have Daisy Pond. It's about a mile hike in, or you just take the Daisy Pond Road in. 1961 was when it was last stocked, but it's still considered a heritage pond. There's brook trout and red belly dace in here. And the biologists say that the bigger trout eat the dace. And there's many, many gravel bars for spawning in here. So the spawning is good. And Stan went fishing here. He caught 3 fish ranging from 12 to 14 inches, and he was using a Mickey fin, like a larger Mickey fin fly, because it's fly fishing only. And before I end my presentation, I just want to say that all these laws of fishing are in place because, you know, we really need to keep overfishing down because, you know, the fish population, obviously if we need to have this heritage waters protection program, that trout already need to be protected. So, you know, overfishing is a big component of, you know, fish population dying out. Or you know, if people are only taking the bigger ones, sometimes they have to say, you know, only one may exceed 14 inches, like at Daisy Pond. Sometimes they have to say that because, you know, if they take too big of trout, then it'll just, you know, the spawning won't be as good and all this stuff. So, you know, these rules and regulations are in place for a reason. And yeah, so we need to listen to them. And here's my citations.
Great job, Sylvia.
Thanks
so much. All right, you. I feel like I'm like I just got some awesome fishing advice, and I think all of us did. That was really really wonderful. All right, who has questions for Sylvia? Anybody ever tried to fish any of these ponds? Emma, you have a question?
Yeah, I know you think I did a lot of hiking, Sylvia, but it looks like you did as well. Do you know how many ponds you made it to?
Well, I made it to all those ponds, and then I made it to, you know, quite a few other places, but I didn't put them in there because, you know, they either aren't, they're like streams. They're not, you know, there's no fishing in there, and so I didn't count them. I have so many more pictures. I have probably over 1,000 pictures from this whole thing I wanted to put in. I'm like, no, I need to keep my time down. So
yeah, I feel you. It was very, very good job.
Thanks, Eric. So Sylvia, can you talk, clearly you have a really strong fishing background and a lot of knowledge before you started the program. Can you talk a little bit about how you got into fly fishing, and had you fished much in the park before the program this summer?
I have actually not fished a lot in the program before the summer. My dad did fly me into Webster Stream one time, and we caught our limit and left fly fishing. So that was really fun. But I've been fishing as long as I can remember. Not necessarily fly fishing, but you know, my grandfather has always really encouraged it, and my dad has always really encouraged it. So, you know, I do have more background than the average person, but I'm definitely nothing to brag about.
Thanks. You're being overly modest, but yeah, no thanks. Yeah. All right. Other questions for Sylvia? All right. Thanks so much. Fantastic. Great job. And you covered a lot of ground and clearly learned a lot. So thanks so much for sharing it with us.